The first thing I noticed wasn't the new barn. It wasn't the fresh white fence stretching across the property, or the gleaming tractors parked neatly beside the shed. It was my mother's old wind chime. The same rusted wind chime I'd hung on our porch 20 years ago. It was still there. And that's when I realized. Strangers had rebuilt my entire farm while I was gone for 10 years. My name is Ethan Cole. I served as a Navy SEAL for over a decade. People assume that being a SEAL means you're fearless. They're wrong. I was terrified every single day. Not of dying, but of coming home and discovering that the life I left behind had moved on without me. Turns out, I had every reason to be afraid. I grew up on a farm in Montana with my parents and my younger sister, Abby. Our farm wasn't huge, but it had history. My grandfather built the original barn with his own hands. My mother planted every apple tree along the driveway. Dad used to say, "Land remembers who loves it." When I enlisted after September 11th, Dad shook my hand. "You do your duty," he said. "We'll keep things running here." For years I kept my promises. I called when I could. Sent money home. Missed birthdays. Missed Christmases. Missed Mom's funeral because my team was deployed overseas. That regret never left me. 3 years after Mom passed away, Dad died from a heart attack. I wasn't there for that either. Abby handled everything. At least, that's what she told me. "You focus on getting home alive," she said over the phone. "I've got things under control." I believed her. 10 years later, my military career ended. I packed my belongings and drove home. I expected weeds, broken fences, a collapsing house. Instead, I almost drove past the property. The farmhouse looked brand new. Fresh paint. New roof. Solar panels. The barns had been rebuilt. The fields were thriving. Even the livestock looked healthier than I remembered. I slammed on the brakes. What the hell? I climbed out of my truck. Confusion turned into anger. Who had done this? And why hadn't anyone told me? An older man emerged from the barn. He froze when he saw me. Then his eyes widened. "Ethan?" I didn't recognize him at first. Then it clicked. "Mr. Donnelly. Our old neighbor." "What happened here?" I asked. His expression shifted. "You don't know?" "Know what?" He hesitated. "You should talk to Abby." My stomach dropped. I drove straight into town. Abby worked at the local diner. The moment she saw me, she burst into tears. "Ethan." I hugged her. Then pulled back. "What happened to the farm?" The color drained from her face. "You really don't know." "Know what?" She glanced around nervously. "We should talk somewhere private." At her apartment, she handed me a stack of papers. Legal notices. Tax documents. Foreclosure warnings. I stared at them. "What is this?" She wiped away tears. 6 years ago, the farm almost got taken away. "What?" "Dad left debts we didn't know about." I felt sick. "We were weeks away from losing everything. Why didn't you tell me?" "You were deployed in Syria." Her voice cracked. "I couldn't distract you." Anger surged through me. "You don't get to make that decision." Then came the first twist. Abby opened an old wooden box. Inside were hundreds of letters. Letters I had written home during deployment. Unopened. "What is this?" She swallowed hard. "Dad never mailed mine to you either." I looked at the postmarks. Years of missing communication. Birthdays. Updates. Warnings. Mom's final message. I could barely breathe. "Dad did this?" Abby's tears fell. "He thought if you focused on the farm, you'd leave the military." Humiliation hit me like a punch. The man I'd admired my entire life had manipulated us both. I stormed outside. I couldn't think. Couldn't process it. My father had stolen years from us. But that wasn't even the worst part. The next morning, Abby took me back to the farm. A group of people gathered near the barn. Teachers, mechanics, retirees, teenagers, farmers. I recognized almost all of them. Mr. Donnelly stepped forward. You deserve the truth. He explained everything. When foreclosure threatened the farm, Abby had tried everything. Second jobs, loans, selling equipment. Nothing worked. Then one evening, someone anonymously paid the overdue property taxes. Soon after, volunteers started showing up. Repairing fences, replacing roofs, planting crops, donating supplies. I stared at them in disbelief. Why? An elderly woman smiled. Because your family helped this town for generations. Another man spoke. You saved my son's life overseas. A young teacher added softly. Your mom paid for my school supplies when my family couldn't. My throat tightened. All these years, I thought the farm had survived because of luck. It survived because kindness had circled back home. Then twist number 2 shattered everything. A lawyer approached me. There is something else. He handed me documents. The anonymous donor who paid off the farm's debts had included one condition. Their identity remained secret until my return. I unfolded the letter. The signature at the bottom nearly stopped my heart. It belonged to Corporal Michael Reyes. I hadn't heard that name in years. Michael had served under my command. During an operation overseas, I pulled him from a collapsing building. He survived. I assumed we'd never cross paths again. The lawyer smiled. He owns several businesses now. I shook my head. This can't be real. Then a familiar voice interrupted. You always were terrible at accepting help. I turned around. There he stood. Michael. Grinning. Older. Alive. I wrapped him in a hug. You idiot. He laughed. You saved my life. You didn't owe me this. He looked around the farm. Maybe not. Then his expression softened. But heroes need saving too. I couldn't speak. For 10 years I carried guilt. For surviving. For missing funerals. For choosing duty over family. And here stood someone reminding me that sacrifice mattered. But life had one final twist waiting. Weeks later, Abby confessed something. She had secretly turned down developers who offered millions for the land. They said you'd never come back. I stared at her. You could have walked away. She nodded. But this place isn't just dirt. Her voice cracked. It's home. I finally understood something. While I was overseas protecting strangers, she'd been fighting battles here alone. I wasn't the only one who sacrificed. The climax came during our town's annual harvest festival. The mayor presented an award recognizing the volunteers who saved the farm. As applause filled the room, I stepped onto the stage. I spent years believing strength meant handling everything yourself. I looked toward Abby. Toward Michael. Toward our neighbors. I was wrong. Silence filled the hall. The strongest people I know aren't warriors. I swallowed hard. They're people who show up when no one is watching. Tears filled Abby's eyes. I continued. My father taught me discipline. I paused. My mother taught me kindness. And this town taught me that family isn't limited to blood. After the ceremony, Mr. Donnelly approached me. So what now, Seal? I looked toward the farm. Toward the rebuilt barns. The apple trees. The porch. The wind chime. I'm staying. Months later, I traded combat boots for work boots. The adjustment wasn't easy. Nightmares still came. Some mornings, grief hit harder than expected. But healing isn't dramatic. It's small moments. Feeding animals before sunrise. Drinking coffee with Abby on the porch. Teaching local kids how to fish. One afternoon, I found Mom's final unopened letter. My hands trembled as I read it. Ethan, if you're reading this, it means I couldn't wait long enough to tell you these things myself. Please don't blame yourself for choosing service. Loving your country never meant loving your family less. Come home when you're ready. Not because you're needed. Because you're loved. I cried harder than I had in years. Because after everything, the wars, the funerals, the betrayal, the loneliness, those were the words I needed most. People often ask me if I resent my father. Some days, yes. Other days, I remember that flawed people can still leave behind good things. His mistakes taught me what not to become. And maybe that's a legacy too. The farm still stands today, stronger than before. Not because strangers rebuilt it, but because they reminded me that even after loss, even after betrayal, even after 10 years away, home can still find its way back to you. Sometimes, the greatest heroes aren't the ones who fight overseas. Sometimes, they're the people who quietly rebuild what others thought was beyond saving. And every time that old wind chime sings in the Montana breeze, I remember something my father used to say. Land remembers who loves it. I think people do too.